So again, this is for the East Gorham Street resurfacing project with utilities. It is the public informational meeting. And the goal of this meeting is to provide the public with some idea of what this project is, why it needs to happen, what we will be doing, how it impacts the public, and give an idea of the schedule of how the project will proceed. This is just a quick layout of what we will be covering. We'll kind of start giving you a broad idea of where the project is, give you an idea of what everything out there looks like and why this project is slated to undergo. We'll take a look at the utilities themselves, take a look at some traffic engineering studies, take a look at tree impacts, and then how the construction will impact residents in the area. And then finally, we'll take a quick look at the assessments and the project schedule. So this is just a quick map showing the limits of the project. The project will be limited to East Gorham from North Butler down to Livingston. We will be doing some side street work on Hancock, but it'll be very limited. Most of the, if not all the work will be in Gorham Street. So this is kind of just a quick layout of why we're kind of doing this project. So this project is a utility only, and more specifically a sanitary only project. The pavement out here is in fair condition. The curb is in good condition. But it has been a while since the pavement has been surfaced last. It's been over 10 years now. We do not propose changing the current width of the street, which is 36 feet, or changing the surface. It will remain as asphalt. And we get down to the real reason why this project is going, and that's because of how old the sanitary sewer is out here. Right now, it is pushing on over 100 years old, which is right in the service life of that sanitary sewer, which tells us it needs to be replaced as soon as possible. So the project scope. Most of the work out here will be underground utility work, and more specifically sanitary sewers. We will be looking to replace all the sanitary sewer main and sanitary sewer laterals from North Butler to Livingston. We will also be doing some limited storm sewer replacement where we found some places where it's broken and cracked and in bad condition. This is mainly in the blocks between North Butler and Hancock. As of right now, there is no water main replacement scheduled with this project. It will be strictly storm and sanitary right now. And MG&E does have some plans to do some limited replacement of their gas mains along with some services. But it'll be limited to replacing the steel mains and lateral services for MG&E. Once all the utility work is completed, we will be doing some street improvements, mainly just patching up the asphalt where we had to remove it in order to install the sanitary work. And the same goes for the sidewalk and curb. So when they're installing the laterals, they will be tearing out some sidewalk and some curb. And so we'll be putting that back in. We do also have some limited spot repairs for sidewalk as well. And so they'll try and get that now while they're out there. But again, it's limited. And it was just where we saw sidewalk was cracked or back pitched or needed to be replaced. So the underground utility work. So the existing state we are out here is pushing its 100-year service life. All the sewer mains are from 1960 and 1928 in that range, and it's all clay pipe. Clay pipe is very brittle and tends to break and crack very easily. As you can see from the couple of pictures here, which are actually taken from East Gorham. A lot of it has some holes, some breakage, some fractures, and it really is an immediate need of repairs. All the laterals are also installed around the same time as the main, so all of them would be close to 100 years old as well. So we would propose replacing those. And the material that we would be replacing the old clay pipe with would be all PVC pipe. So it'd be all brand new PVC for both the main and laterals. With the laterals themselves, we will be replacing them from the main up to the property line. Now this slide here is kind of giving you a breakdown of the ownership of who owned what in the sewer system. So the public main is owned by the city, and the actual laterals themselves are all private, starting from the main themselves all the way to the property, or all the way to the house, sorry. With the project, we will be replacing the portion in yellow that you see there, basically from the property line right behind the sidewalk all the way out to where it connects to the public main. This slide here we wanted to touch on, as there were potential for some bump outs to be included with this project. What we did was we reviewed the limits of the lateral locations and where traffic engineering had reviewed and would like to put pedestrian bump outs at intersections. When comparing the locations of those bump outs and the lateral locations, we did not find any spots where they coincided. And what that means is with this project, we will not be including any bump outs right now. Those would be installed with future projects and future resurfacing projects. So this slide is just kind of giving you an idea of the public right-of-way out on East Gorham. It is a 66-foot public right-of-way, and the right-of-way basically extends. It'd be 33 feet on either side of the center line, or roughly the edge of it would be roughly 12 inches behind the sidewalk. So that's the point that we will be installing laterals up to. It will be roughly that 1 foot behind the sidewalk on both sides of East Gorham. Along with that, we do have some tree impacts with this project themselves. City Forestry had gone out and reviewed all trees along the project limits. All the trees that were identified to be removed were identified because of either poor health, poor condition, or were preemptive ash removals. I don't know that we actually do have any ash redness. I think they're all either due to poor health or poor condition. But they are currently marked out there in yellow, and they will be listed in the assessment mailing that goes out tomorrow. So construction, what this project will impact as far as the day-to-day out on the project site. So during construction, there will be reduced traffic. We ideally would try to keep traffic open to 2 lanes, but there may be instances where they are installing laterals where they may need to reduce it to 1 travel lane, but we will maintain traffic throughout the project limits. So there'll always be at least 1 lane open to travel through. Driveway access will be maintained as well, unless they are working directly in front of you as they go through with the sewer main or are installing some of the laterals. There may be an hour or 2 where you will not be able to access your driveway. Construction crews, they tend to try and alert the homeowners when they will be cutting off access as they come through with the pipe. But sometimes they're just going and installing and aren't able to do it. So it's hit or miss, but most of the time it's only for an hour or 2 that you will lose driveway access. The exception to that is if there is any concrete work that needs to be done on your driveway apron or in the curb or sidewalk that leads to your driveway apron. The contract and the specs actually do allow for a 2-week of closure of driveway aprons in order to allow for any concrete to cure. So that is a possibility for some. It will not be for everyone, but it could be for some. The contractor is allowed to work for 12 hours a day from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And during that time, we will be limiting the parking on the street to allow for travel lanes and traffic to flow through there. So there will be some parking impacts along with this project as well. We will try to limit them as much as possible, but it's something to be aware of. So now we get to the assessment policy and the costs associated with this project. This is an assessable project, and we will be assessing for both the curb and gutter, the sidewalk, and the sanitary lateral itself. The sewer main is 100% city cost, but the sanitary laterals are a cost share between the property owner and the city. The city will cover 75% of that cost, and the property owner is responsible for 25% of that cost. For curb and gutter, it's split 50-50. So the city will cover half and the property owner will need to cover half. So depending on the length of your lateral and the amount of sidewalk and curb and gutter that needs to be removed, the estimates really could range pretty widely, but on average, it'll be right around $4,000 per property. So the assessment pie itself, the way that the assessments work is we will be mailing out an estimated assessment for each property. And those estimates will be mailed out tomorrow. You should be receiving them hopefully next week. And that'll give you the estimate that we believe will be assessed once the project is constructed. Now that estimate is the maximum that you will be assessed. And so once the project is complete, we will be putting out final assessments, which will actually be based on contract bid prices. And those will actually be mailed out then the following summer after the project is completed. Once you receive those final assessments, that is the actual amount that you will need to be paid. And those assessments can be paid in a lump sum or over 8 years at a 3% interest rate. The city does have a loan program for assessments. And in order to qualify for the loan, it's all dependent on income and the amount of people in your household. And so it's pretty limited to qualify, but we will be posting that information on the city or on the project website for anyone that's interested to see if they do qualify for that. All right, so for the project schedule, as I said earlier, we will be mailing out the assessments tomorrow, and you'll be receiving that next week. Included with that assessment mailing will be a little bit of a fact sheet, kind of going over what was stated here, as well as some contact information with everyone involved with the project. We are planning on putting the project out to bid a week from today. And then it will be a 2-week bid cycle in which we would open bids and determine who the contractor will be on May 28th. So some big approval dates are the Board of Public Works hearing and the Common Council hearing. These are both opportunities for the public to voice either their concerns or their support for the project in front of the Board of Public Works and the Common Council. So there's 2 dates there. And then once we receive the bids and get a contractor on board and go through the contract voting, we are hoping to begin construction via June 13th and end construction then the end of October. So one thing to note here on this schedule is it's a very aggressive schedule for what we typically do. It's pretty compact, which is kind of unfortunate, but what we want to make clear is through this public information meeting is that we will be taking comments throughout the entire process from now up through essentially the time we receive bids. So if we want to make it clear, feel free to voice any comments, concerns that you may have. You can send those to myself or voice them at the Board of Public Works hearing. And we do have time to still address those before bidding the project and receiving those bids. So this slide here is kind of a list of all of the contacts for the project. It has myself on there as well as the traffic engineer. One person that wasn't mentioned tonight was the construction engineer, John Farney, and his inspectors will be out on site. So it's another contact for you once construction is underway. And then we also list the project forester for you. Also listed there is the project website. That's where we will be updating everyone as construction goes along and as this process of bidding goes along. We'll be posting information there for everyone, and you can actually sign up to get email updates once the project is underway to get updated. And then the last source for project information will be on our Facebook site. Just another place where we'll be posting. It'll be pretty much echo a lot of the information that will be on the project website as well. With that, I think we'll open it up for questions and answers. Do you want to click on Q&A? All right. So I'll start going through here. The first one here, let's see here. All right, so the first one is just kind of reiterating who I guess I am, and kind of going through some of the start dates. So my name is Kyle Frank, and I'm the project engineer and utility engineer for the project. Okay, I think we covered a lot of the stuff already in that first question there. So the next question is asking about dust mitigation throughout the project. The contractor themselves are required to do street sweeping every single day in order to try to cut down on excess dust around the project site. We could also, and a lot of times they'll do it themselves, we'll actually spray down the site as well, and particularly dry times, or if there's very windy conditions and we do see significant dust popping up. So dust mitigation is planned with the project, and it's something that we do try to address on all of our projects. The next question was, how's contractor incentivized to complete the construction by October 31st? Essentially, they're incentivized through the contract, and then through, it essentially is through penalties if they don't, monetary penalties if they don't meet that construction date. And the policy for all those fees are laid out in our standard spec. So that's kind of the incentive for them to complete it by the end date. Next question was, how far into the property will the lateral go? So the laterals themselves will not go any further than the property line. That property line is typically 1 foot behind the sidewalk on both sides of Gorham Street. So that's kind of the best gauge to go off of, is find the edge of the sidewalk, go 1 foot behind it, and that'll be the absolute edge of where we will install the lateral to. The next question has to do with how the bike lanes will be accommodated during lane closure or otherwise. I'll actually open that up to Tom Moore, who is our traffic engineer for the project, and he can take that question.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm Tom Moore with traffic engineering. For this project, we might be able to keep the lane open, the bike lane and a travel lane open in some areas, but likely due to the depth of the sanitary sewer and where it's located, there's probably going to be cases where we have to detour the bikes off of Gorham. But those are still details that we're working out right now. So we'll keep it open when we can, but realistically, there's probably going to be times where bikes have to be detoured.
Great, thanks, Tom. Next question, will aprons be replaced, or is it a function of where the lateral is located? For this project, it is squarely based on where the lateral is located. Unfortunately, if the lateral happens to run through the driveway aprons, we will have to replace them due to having to tear them out in order to replace that lateral. I don't believe there are any aprons that are just scheduled to come out due to poor condition. Everything that I'm aware of is due to lateral replacement themselves. Next question, there are 2 B&Bs in the work area. Will there be outages of utilities, water or sewer, and for how long typically? So because water is now replacing with this project, there will be or should be no water outages or turnoffs, shutoffs. Sewer, there will be essentially two shutoffs of service. One will be when they come through initially with the new main, they'll come through first and they will temporarily connect your lateral once the new main comes through. So that'll be one time where you will be shut off, and this will be pretty temporary. We're talking only a couple hours. And the next time would be when they actually replace the lateral. And that time frame would be roughly the same, roughly around 2 to 3 hours of sewer service being cut off. The next question, you said at least one lane of traffic will be open. Did you mean that 2 lanes will be open because there are currently 3, 2 motorized vehicles and 1 bike? Will the bike lane be open at all times? So we kind of just touched on that with the previous question. It's still up in the air whether bike lane will be detoured or not. And as far as traffic closures and lane closures, it's kind of dependent on what portion of the project that they will be working on. When they are installing the main, more than likely we would maintain that 2 lanes of traffic going through. Where it could become difficult would be when they are extending laterals across the street on either side. And it's just a function of where the traffic lanes wind up and line up with the actual sewer installation. So that, to get back to that, 2 lanes more than likely will be open at all times. And the bike lane is still up in the air whether it'll be detoured or maintained through the project limits itself. Next question, there will be some storm sewer work. Will any of you be preparing for the new infiltration pond wetland that is in James Madison master plan? No, the sewer work right now would just be to improve anything in the public right-of-way that is in poor condition. It's mainly 3 pipes that we are concerned with that are showing some poor conditions. And those pipes would just be replaced or lined to bring them back up into good condition. We wouldn't be dealing with anything with any of the James Madison master plan features, including the filtration pond or wetland areas. Okay, next question. How would you recommend we determine whether the lateral from our property line to our house needs to be replaced? Is it wise to coordinate that work with this project or not a factor? In order to determine the condition, the best route is to actually hire a private plumber to come out and do a closed circuit CCTV of your lateral. What they'll do is they'll come into the house and put a push camera into your lateral, extend it through the lateral all the way to the main. And through the TV, they can kind of determine what condition the lateral is in. If it was determined that it wasn't bad condition and you did want to replace it, it may be wise to coordinate that work because you could potentially use the contractor, the same contractor, to do the work that is doing the street work, to do the private work. But ultimately, it's up to you to determine that and to hire a private plumber to do that work. So the next question, could you expand on when there might be opportunities for bump outs to be installed since they won't be included with this project? Sure. Since the bump outs won't be included with this project, they will be planned to be included with the full resurfacing project, which is scheduled to be done next year. With that project itself, they'll actually come through, mill and overlay the entire width of the street and replace it with all new asphalt. And when they do that, at that time would be when we would look to include those bump outs on the north side of the street. Currently that is scheduled for next year. That's subject to change, but that is the current plan. Next question was, we've been given 15-minute notices to shut off water in the past. Can you work to make sure that gets noticed at least one day before any outage? I would say yes. The problem with that is if there was an emergency water break. And the reason why we couldn't give any additional notice is because we would not know, and it would just happen, where a water main would just break and we would have to basically shut it down in order to make that fix. So unfortunately with this project, if there were any water shutoffs, we probably wouldn't have much of a notice because it would be due to a water main break, since we are not planning any outages at this time. How are gardens in the terrace handled? So terrace rain gardens are determined based on the width of the terraces themselves. And in order to qualify, you typically need to have at least 12-foot terraces, which in this area we would not have. Unfortunately, it's pretty limited on what we can do as far as any terrace rain gardens are here. I don't know if there really is any place where they would work great, but it's something we could look into. But I'm not too positive it would work out very well in this area, unfortunately.
Kyle?
Yes.
I think they might be asking about their existing gardens that might be in the terrace.
Oh, okay. Sure. If there is any plantings or any other landscaping or anything like that in the terrace, it would be best to transplant that prior to the project starting. We will try to get out there and actually paint the location of the laterals to give you an idea of where they will be coming through, give you an idea where that construction will be happening. But in general, the safest thing to do would be to transplant them during the duration of the project. That way they for sure won't be disturbed. All right, next question. There have been many questions about street trees. Can you summarize decisions and such? As far as I know, as far as the street trees are concerned, when the forester went through and looked at all the trees, he identified ones that he felt were in poor condition or in bad condition and needed to become or needed to be removed at this time. Again, as far as I know, none of the trees will be impacted by the actual laterals themselves. We will be able to work around them. So there won't be any additional trees removed due to the sanitary laterals. It's all based on the tree conditions themselves. I know in the past, the forester has met with citizens out there to discuss the condition and what he's seeing and what they're finding. And I would think that this would be the case as well. So if anyone wants to forward either his concerns to myself or to the forester, we can certainly discuss that with you and meet on site to take a look at it. Next question kind of dealt with the trees again, and yes, kind of reiterating, the forester would be able to meet on site to take a look at the trees and talk them over with you. Next question has to do with undergrounding of overhead utilities and installing conduits for future undergrounding is feasible or not. I don't know, Chris, do you want to take this for now, or do you want me to try and cover some of it?
Sure. I think you had my video turned off, but so the question, the undergrounding utilities question, Kyle, is that it?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So undergrounding of utilities is a very, very expensive process. It oftentimes can cost more than the actual street reconstruction itself to get all that conduit down in the street, and also cost the property owners a fair amount in they have to upgrade their panel most times in their basement to accept the undergrounding. So for those reasons, we do them in a very limited amount of times. There's just not enough city funds to underground everywhere. And we've established a policy about 5 or 10 years back regarding what types of projects are able to be undergrounded. And there's a number of criteria. And one of the major criteria is it's got to be a street reconstruction where you're basically tearing up the entire street, the stone base, the asphalt, all the curb and gutter, and having kind of a full open area for the utility to install the undergrounding for their pipes and conduits. This project is just going to be a sewer replace, and then eventually a quick resurface. So that would not be a candidate for undergrounding in our based on our policy, and it's really not feasible because there's never going to be an open area for the utilities to install their stuff. So that's kind of I guess a quick summary of the undergrounding.
All right, thanks, Chris.
I see Alder Heck added a question there about conduits for future undergrounding. That is kind of what you do during a reconstruct project. They actually install those conduits first, and then what happens is it often takes like a couple years for the individual homeowners to all upgrade their panels and be able to accept the undergrounding. So the poles don't actually come down in an undergrounding project for sometimes 2 and 3 years later. But what we do, you do need that reconstruction to have that open area for that conduit to be installed. So at this point, we would not be looking at conduits, but that is something we could, I guess, take a look at and discuss some more.
All right, thanks, Chris. Move on. So another question that came in was more about landscaping in the terrace area and what effort the contractor would make to protect plantings beyond the area where the lateral crosses. In general, we will lay out the area where the lateral is to be replaced. And the contractor, since this is a pretty limited scope as to the actual excavation in the street and where the lateral comes through, we're only looking at about a 10-foot wide excavation area through the terraced areas. And what we can do to try and limit that is essentially label and make sure that it's called out on the plan sheets to not disturb any area outside of that. So we can specifically call out certain areas on the plan sheet to try and protect stuff. If you would like that to be the case, please email me those concerns, and we can get that added to the plan set so the contractor is made aware of that. Another question, do you have an educated guess on whether laterals from the property line to the house are likely to be the same age, materials as the ones you are replacing, or would it vary by age of the house and other factors? In general, we would guess that the laterals themselves would be the same age and material as the main that is being replaced. Most of the time, once that main goes in, they install the laterals at the same time, especially up to the property line. And then the lateral from that point would be potentially different. But in general, it would be the same vintage of age and material for the laterals. Next question was, you mentioned 3 major pipes. Can you speak to the location of those pipes? So the major sanitary sewer main right now runs basically down the center of East Gorham Street. And we will be replacing in that same area. So the sewer main will be going right back in the center of the street. The lateral locations may change slightly in order to get around any trees or obstructions or anything like that. But in general, everything will be going back in very close to the same area that they are right now. Next question has to do with the assessments. Do the assessments apply to the handful of property owners who own the homes in James Madison Park, but who don't own the land? That is a good question. One that I actually not sure how to answer. Mark or Chris, would you be able to answer that maybe?
Yeah, I can answer that. So the assessments go to the landowner. So in that case, that's Madison Parks, and so basically the city's paying for its own lateral.
All right, thanks, Chris. All right, so the next question here was, will the resurfacing project that might occur next year include assessments? To the best of my knowledge, no, it would not. I think the way we had set it up was we would include all the assessments this year with this project. And then next year, they would do basically just the resurfacing project, which would just be the street resurfacing, which would not include assessments. Maybe Chris can correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, we'll try to do the best we can with that. That's certainly our intention, and hopefully we can do that. If there are some, the only exception I could think of is maybe where we might be pulling curb on the north side. That's in maybe rough shape that we won't get at this year. But that would be mostly parkland, so that really wouldn't affect any homeowners. I see Alderheck chimed in. So the resurfacing, the question would be, is the resurfacing only Livingston to Butler, or no? We would plan actually to go from Butler all the way to the Y over at Baldwin Street. So the reason we're not doing the sewer that far is the sewer was replaced in that from Livingston to Baldwin earlier, I think about 2008-ish. So that's our plan, would be to resurface next year from Livingston to, Butler to Baldwin. And obviously, the homeowners who are between Livingston and Baldwin, who are not getting the sewer repaired this year, they may have the same kind of issue, like with some spare spot repair of curb assessments that might occur.
All right, I think that's all the questions I'm seeing. Oh, sorry, say that again. Okay. Yeah, I guess we can still take questions. Everyone want to raise their hand. If you have one right now, we can try and answer that. All right. I'm not seeing too much else come in. I think we may look to wrap this up then. I will say again, if anything, any other questions do come up, any other concerns do come up, please feel free to email myself at the contact there. It'll also be included with the assessment letter that comes out. And we'll definitely look into those emails and comments and concerns and take them into account in the final design. If no one else has anything, I think we will be ending this. So thanks everyone for coming, and hopefully it wasn't too painful.